Okay, hello everyone. Oops. Alright, the headphones are connected now. Hello everyone, welcome to tonight's episode. The title is When the Verb and Noun Fought Over Truth. And I wanted to speak about language, and I feel it is the most important thing, activity, one of the most important activities that is going on this planet. And so, human beings, it is not enough for us to just be objects. This object requires to move, it requires to articulate its space, and then it requires to create new trajectories, new movements. So we are an object trying to be a subject, and we are a subject trying to remain as an object. And in this relationship of an object and a subject, we find the existence of our species and how it experiences the experience. Okay, this might be a better song to speak over. So, we are an object. We have noticed ourselves as a subject. Now the subject is moving the object. The subject is in language. Everybody's story of life is in language. It's kind of like Ludwig Wittgenstein. He says the limits of my world, the limits of my language is the limits of my world. And what he means is that anything an object looks at and cannot relate to itself, it cannot subjectify. Now, this object is creating two types of relationships with the world around it. This, like after a long phase of evolution, an object's become a subject to itself. Now, the way we subjectively exist to ourselves, you see, it's as if we have divided it between verbs and nouns. And I would say this is another way of saying that the nature of reality is dynamic, it is moving, it is like a film. And when we say, when we look at the concept of a noun, it is in some sense static. A noun is like an image of a film. It's like a frame of a film. One approach is contained. Nouns are contained. But a verb can be infinite. And this is the biggest thing when it comes to, for example, metaphysics, that they asked Buckminster Fuller, one of the greatest designers and minds on this planet, and they asked him, what is God? And he said, God is a verb, it is not a noun. And this made me really wonder, we are living in this world, we're treating things like nouns, we're treating ourselves like a noun, but what if the truth underlying the exoteric dimensions of the world is not a static truth, it is dynamic? It's like saying that we have been conditioned in a universe where we are considering we are finite first, then infinite. But now imagine being infinite and what you do is finite. That means being is an infinite quality of the universe. Doing is a temporary quality of the universe. When I wonder about my being, I'm a human being right now. When I wonder about my being, it is energy. When I wonder about how I'm being based on what I do, it's like the moment I do something, that's where the human comes in. That means it's very hard to even know what the human being is if we never moved. Imagine human beings were just like statues that appeared and never moved, and they were just looking out. You know, imagine we were like trees. We would never know the personality. You know, and it's in our movements. And even I will tell you, a person who makes a mistake is way ahead than a person who doesn't do anything. Because they have at least attempted to see a new dimension of your being. That means, think of it this way: without verbs, nouns can't know they are nouns. And it's like Hadith Qudsi from the Sufi tradition, where it's as if the voice of God, and God says, I was unknown, and I wanted to be known. So I created the world, and I created man and the great game of cosmos in a glance. It wasn't that, the wording wasn't that like that. The wording is just, I was unknown, and I wanted to be known, and I created the world. That's the Hadith Qudsi. It's a bit more fine-tuned than that. The statement, but the idea is that something that was being unknown had to do something. That means doing is what being does. That means it's like Pokemon, a noun evolved to a verb. And we don't have this in current language, but I feel it should be implemented. I have humorously, but actually seriously, said in these talks that in the future, two words are going to have a lot of weight. And I called it two ideological systems. And these ideological systems, I'm pointing to them playfully, but they cannot be ideological systems. And it's the concept of unknownism and beyondism. And I felt that in the Hunger Games of all ideological systems, though these two will be the most eternal. It doesn't matter what picture we find to the world, we will always wonder about the beyond. We will always wonder about the unknown. Why? Because that is the universal destination of the species. How long can we chase our own whispers on a rock in the middle of nowhere? Eventually some sort of bigger scenery needs to engage us. So it's like there was a noun. The noun got bored. And getting bored is a verb, of course, but we can say it's a noun that was seeded with a verb. That means pretty much it's like there was something and something began to move. That is all of that is all of it, like in the interpretation of intelligence. It can be said that a verb is the quality of a noun. It's the potential of a noun. That means a noun is, and a verb is how something is being, but it's like something is being on a treadmill. So really we can say that verbs are when the world moves the noun, or when the noun moves the world. I wouldn't say when the noun moves the world. I would say it's kind of like a person on a treadmill, but now we're looking at the person as the noun, and we're looking at the treadmill as the verb. If the treadmill wasn't there, this noun wouldn't be a verb to itself. So we need the world to animate, and it can be said that if we experience a state of consciousness where the world is not the same, we cannot be animate in the same way. Right? So it's like treating yourself really as a noun or a verb. At the beginning of my life, up to the year 2011, I treated it all like a giant noun, like a giant known noun, to a point where I did not even care what people were saying about the mind, about the body. It was just as if like you've entered a world, there's a game already being played, and join the game. You know, but if we were to, I don't know how to say it, it's like in 2011 I noticed that the way I was holding the world to myself was a flaw when I don't even know who is looking through my eyes. That means the mystery of an unknown mind made me doubt the noun that I had accepted for my known story of existence. That means the nouns were suddenly not enough. And then it's like you go to the verbs. It's as if like you thought all of life was like a picture. When you realize it is a film, the truth is not find some language that is just pointing to the altar. The truth becomes participation. It becomes symbiosis. It becomes living alongside a living universe. There's so many ways to see this relationship of the noun and the verb. That's why I said when the noun and the verb fought over truth. There could be moments where they don't fight. There could be an angle that what is a noun in, for example, the 2 dimensions is actually a verb in the 3 dimensions. And what is a verb in the 3 dimensions is a noun in the 4th dimension. And it just keeps going on and on, where reality is being defined in accordance to how it is moving, and it's in accordance to how it is. And so when is the species going to get to a point where we see being and doing is inseparable? Because this is really the sign of an advanced civilization. A civilization that doesn't fear all the possible angles that it can see itself. Right now, we are in the era of judgment. I can't tell you how easy it is to judge people. Just put a language, just throw language at them, and you can just instantly judge them, because we think we are under the impression that we're thinking we're a thought. And it doesn't make sense, because if the verb is a thought and the noun is a thought, how can the noun do something that's a verb? You see, so ideologically, just this idea, I think, therefore I am, is not wrong. René Descartes was a genius, but it was that they misinterpreted what he meant when I said, I think, therefore I am. They thought René Descartes meant you're a thought, you're a piece of thought. It's like, look at this piece of thought. It's as if someone's parked in front of your driveway, you're like this piece of thought, you know. I feel that materialism is trying to hide verbs by treating them as nouns. And the verb is where the mystery is. That means I could sit here in this moment and put any box of language over my head and just think the world is that way. But I will know as long as there is something that's moving. The unknown is more alive than we are. Do you know how many types of intelligence there could be alive right now that surpasses the human framework? And if all of our knowledge is for human understanding, how much of the world we will never understand because we have not chosen to step out of our cave? There is this idea that Plato came up with, and it was called the allegory of the cave. And it is a very important idea. This idea is it's another way of saying simulation theory. How you get out of a simulation. I would say the first, it's hilarious. That means like you don't find any writings on like advanced technologies and sciences. When you go very far back, you see the writings on how to escape a simulation. That was pretty much what really drew me into yogic wisdom and the mystical angle, that there is something that nobody can touch, nobody can touch. It is the presence of the alive, that which is unconditionally alive. We only know conditional life. We only know what it means to be alive if certain circumstances, if the earth is in the right axis, if we're in the right distance away from the sun, you know, if the equator is at its angle, you know. There is so many things that if they change, we change, even in scientific thinking. You know, there was a man named Rupert Sheldrake. He was one of the early multidimensionalists who tried to respond to scientific materialism, but himself being like a Trojan horse as a very incredible scientist, Rupert Sheldrake. Now, this idea of the simulation, excuse me. To continue, I was just trying to build up to this idea that the way we define the world suggests the doorway to our next moment. The planet has a memory. That was really what I feel Rupert Sheldrake in his work is trying to point at. That it's as if the planet remembers. Memory is not limited to the human brain. It may be a quality of space that it contains to itself on the other side of the coin meaning. Should truth be an updating vision? Should it be an updating verb, or should truth be an absolute noun? The religious lens is treating truth as an absolute noun. The secular lens is treating it as an endlessly updating verb. That means the way the scientific method is designed, you can declare anything and in the future you'll be corrected. You see? So science has given itself full freedom for fiction by realizing that in the future the non-fiction will filter out the fiction, right? What if religion is being treated as an absolute? Let's say you're a religious person and you open the holy book and you're like, this is it, this is it. And for you in that moment, that's the scenery. It's just ink on a page, but the way your brain looks at that ink on the page and animates, sees a lens of meaning. You would say sometimes when it's like the person noticed divinity and the person's like, wait a minute, if I saw divinity, does that mean my brain is divine? That means if the person witnessed a miracle, how can something that is not a miracle witness a miracle? It's literally like the capacity for understanding something. This battle between verbs and nouns. Here's the hilarious thing. Beyond verbs and nouns, it's just an attributeless mover as a moment of being. I'm not kidding. This is one thing that our species, nobody in history could have really said. Why? Because we hadn't matured enough in language. But now we have reached a point where we're like, okay, we're not just an object. We have subjects. Now we're like, okay, we're not just a subject. We're witnessing the simultaneity of energy and attention being the experience of existence. And you know, even in our attempts to define energy, right? We say energy cannot be created or destroyed. Literally, that's a view of energy as a noun. Then we say energy changes from form to form. That means this energy, that it's like something that is generally a noun, specifically is a verb. And it could be that when we zoom out, it's a verb. The world is a verb. But when we zoom in, we are the most initial noun, right? Because I thought about it. I thought about it that, let me say, okay, I'm a self in a world. If literally the atoms that are being the ground that I'm standing on, this ground, if it changed quicker than I could move, there would be nowhere to move, right? So this whole simulation of language, And of course, it's something that we woke up to. It's like an object suddenly was like, yo, I'm an object. What the fuck? You know, like it's like that. And excuse me. Excuse me. To continue, I want to say, and the most important thing is that when it comes to human psychology, this relationship of energy not being able to be created or destroyed being a noun, and then energy changing from form to form being a verb, it's like the same with people. If a person sees a person and says this is a good person, flawed, wrong answer. If somebody says this is a bad person, wrong answer. If the person notices this person, oh, this human being that I'm judging is not a noun of my own imagination, it's a verb. It's a verb that changes to itself and to the world. That means it's not just the speaker is changing, it's that the listeners are changing too. Anyone who realizes the mind is an unknown verb, that means you will free yourself from all your enemies. You will free yourself from all joyous delusions. I am telling you, when you realize something is changing beyond your control, like realistically, what can you do as a being, as a creature? You can watch it. And that watching eventually makes the being realize the verb is the nature, not the noun. Nouns are they are like moments in history that have been frozen, eternally frozen. Nouns are frozen verbs. You know, it's as if like nouns, they pertain to the human body. Verbs, they pertain to the human mind, the idea of the mind. And then we need another word, right, for the soul, right? And I feel this has to be created. And this is a moment in language. This concept is very strange because we already have movement and we have stillness. Now the only word we can have other than noun and a verb is something that is witnessing the noun and the verb simultaneously. I got it. We have nouns, we have verbs, and then we have verby nouns. Verby nouns. VERBINOUNS. But still doesn't point to the witness, but it's kind of like the infusion of the verb and the noun. So maybe we should call it verb, noun, witness. We should call it verby nouns, but spelled with a W. There we go. Verby nouns spelled with a W. This solves it. There we go. I would say the verby noun is the phoenix of language. Anyways, if we treat people as verbs, we don't get deceived, and we don't deceive them. If we treat people like nouns, we are treating them like the clay of our inner realm, and the person can become, in a very ignorant way, cruel. That means this is a sort of cruelty where the person wants the outer realms to need to be just like the inner realms, without realizing that the inner realms are here to assist the outer realms. That means you need a body before you can have a mind. So if you want to use your mind, you got to know how to use your body. So once you use your body, or you have an awareness of what it is, right, then for example in mysticism, meditation, through stillness and silence, just these two things, anywhere, anytime, whoever you are and whatever you do. You could be a busy CEO, you could be like a monk. It doesn't matter. It's just be still and silent, and you will notice your mind's movement. Now, after you notice your mind's movement, this is where the question comes, where you are noticing the body's stillness, which is the noun, and then you are noticing the body's movement, which is the verb. And the question comes, who is aware of thought when the eyes are closed? That means if you closed your eyes and you remember the memory, who is that noticing the memory? That means who is watching your memories behind your eyes? Perhaps this is why we say my body, my mind, my soul. And what is that my? It is beyond, it is the witness. It is what is with, it is energy's true eyes, regardless of how we shape ours. the point is that the observed and the observer, which at first seem to be the holy grails of truth, you realize you're holding it. That means it's like first you notice you're not just an object, then you notice you're not just a subject, then you notice there's an observer watching the object and subject, then you notice this observer is attributeless. When you notice it is attributeless, psychology has to trust the unknown. When your psychology trusts the unknown, it actually goes back to its energetic roots, which surpass human personality. It restores from there, and then from a new experiential rhythm, you come back, pretty much like a bird that was stuck on a branch, and the bird's like suddenly realizes, why have I been on one branch? This bird flies into the sky, sees the whole system, and then with the free will of a higher gaze, you can the 3D has a freedom to choose in the 2D. You know, that means if we were in Square Town and a square just appeared, you know, the squares in that town would be like, yo, this square just teleported, it's a miracle. But there was, imagine a cube being moved on that table, on that Square Town. If we treat life like a verb, it means there is no such thing as the idea of death, and even if there is, we can never know what death is. That means the true dismantling of whatever is the identity is coming from is a suggestion that when the person breaks, that means the system, the elements return to nature. It's like the way it's designed is that it's like we require to break as a suggestion of our change, and the moment we break, we're not the same person. That means any moment where something happens that hadn't happened before, it renders it a new moment. To build a civilization, an advanced civilization, we have to quickly come into terms with the verb nature of the mind and the noun nature of the body, and then an infusion of these. That means, I will tell you, there's moments like right now I am using my mind to I'm noticing an inner film, and then I am translating that, literally putting words to imagery I'm seeing in my inner realms, in my mind's room. Now that's like my attention choosing to move in the inner realms faster than the outer realms. But in moments where the person has to physically do something, let's say you want to climb a tree and you want to do it in like 4 seconds, or like you want to do it really quickly, right? So it's as if like the mind, that momentum of the verb is focused on the noun. So hilariously, let's say somebody wants to do a backflip, that's when your whole body has become the object of your meditation. Your body is your point of concentration has become the body. So it's like this non-local concentration on locality. Non-local concentration on locality, yeah. That means this unknown way where we're looking at something known, or zooming in on something known, or as in yogic terms it would be the single pointedness of mind. You know, it's kind of like, imagine like the first yoga teacher, right? And the yoga teacher's like, find an object of your meditation, find something to concentrate on and to just have a single pointed attention. And then the disciple was like, anything? And the yogi's like, yeah, it could be anything, but you got to find an object. And the person's like, so that means I could make myself an object of my meditation. And the yogi's like, holy shit, yeah, you can do that. You know, and the person's like, wait a minute, I can make the whole world an object of the meditation if I consider the world to be physical. And the person's like, yeah. So you can see anything as, I don't know, it's like you can live as your whole moment, then fragmented relationships within it, or you can be the fragmented relationships trying to endlessly find the whole moment that is already there before you do anything. The unknown is not good or bad. It is not heaven or hell. It is the recognition that the center of meaning has nothing to do with the circumference. It has to do with how you see the circumference of the circle, let's say, but my presence right now is like the center of the circle. My personality being the circumference, and every moment that I communicate, it's as if there's an oscillation, like an infinity sign, instead of the radius from the center of the circle to that. And that infinity sign being a sort of movement. You know, it's as if the person is looping to the same position. You know what's strange? If the true nature of reality, this may be an intense idea, but if it is purely a verb, there is no such thing as meaning. That means we could have committed a grave error as biological creatures to have assumed that we can see meaning in a system so big. So to build a meaningful civilization doesn't seem like a strategy, but to build a civilization that is endlessly updating, which is more closer to the unknown, will survive the karmic weather of, I would say, this universal sector. You see, there is more than things, human beings here. The scholar Terence McKenna, he said one of the most incredible sentences I've heard on this planet. He said, and he was commenting on the human species, and he said there is another tenant in the room. As if our life is being first the universe's life, then our life. So what we think is our karma is hilariously like the universe's karma, if you want to implement that idea. You want that means if a person chooses to see cause and effect, well, you're like, okay, am I the universe happening, or is the universe me happening, right? And in our secular understanding of a society for individuals, we're like, we are happening and then the universe is happening. We are seeing the meaning in it, right? But it's kind of this thing where there has to be movement for there to be the idea of stillness, and there has to be stillness for the idea of movement. That means it's like the stench of duality for those who know this realm moves way beyond than just two modalities of interpretation. That means we're living in a binary global morality. It's like 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy. Literally all the movies are all this. Like, I'm so tired of seeing good and bad guys. I just want to see films where there's just mediocre people just sitting, you know? It's like, you know, just like a 2-hour film of just a person sitting in a coffee shop, you know, just talking. You know what I mean? Like, it's as if the good guy and the bad guy thing is such an old school pattern. I'm like, okay, which generation's gonna stop playing tag? You know? The multidimensional means understanding is suggesting there is many ways to look at a moment. That's the true nature of it. That means it's as if like the person, let's say, says something, somebody comes and says what you said was wrong. And then the person responds and says, who says it's wrong? Right? And so when you counter any ideological system that cannot endure breaking, that means I would say true articulation is in your inner realms, just instantly creating and breaking. It's kind of like your inner realms can present probabilities of the moment that are moving faster than the moment, so you're using those probabilities of your inner realms to live and die in the moment endless times. It's like the Japanese samurai. In their Bushido, in Hagakure, the book of the samurai, it's as if the warrior is prepared to, just like how someone is prepared to live every moment, this is in samurai psychology. The person is also ready to die in every moment, as if there's no longer life is greater than death, or death is greater than life. There is no glorification, it's just abiding by nature, right? And noticing the changing nature of the realm. And honor is to use your conscious will. You can say, I mean, it is a bit extreme and intense what the samurai did. I mean, I'm not a samurai scholar to comment on this, but this deeply. But I'll say there was something about it where I was like, why did the samurai do, for example, what's it called, harikiri? Why did the samurai do that? Right? And I was like, wow, it's like an entity trying to prove to itself that it was in control of its life. But wisdom only comes when you realize what is not in your control is okay. Most people, they feel what's not in their control has to immediately come into their control. It's like, oh my God, you know, I don't have access to all these things. I need to instantly have access to all these things, you know. But life is really like something where you're, again, an unknown, attributeless presence of an attention that nobody other than your own eyes can be a comment on. And this attention moves. And if a human being cannot cultivate the ability to experience themselves in unknown ways, even if there is a chance that the René Descartes' mind-body dualism holds, and that the mind doesn't die and that the body only dismantles, and the mind is like the noun, a sort of view of energy that can't be created or destroyed, as if the mind is a type of energy, but it's conscious. It's as if we wouldn't even be prepared because we have been just conditioned. What I feel is going on is that if we are multidimensional, death doesn't mean death, life doesn't mean life. So we cannot have the same approach. It's like Einstein says, you cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it. Well, it's as if we have changed, and so we are not the same level of consciousness automatically. And really, what is the purpose of life? You know, most people who want to achieve something in the future, it's like the journey of the human being is like be a verb until you get to the noun you desire. You know, work hard until your dreams come true. It's like, what? Dreams coming true? If a dream comes true, you're still in the dream. The dream is true. Do you know? It's so the system can be flawed, where it's as if life is like a verb, but it's an unconditional verb, a verb that is not bound to a sort of way the noun is. Right? And when I say life, I'm not just saying about the body, because in front of our eyes, yes, the verb in the outer realms is dependent, is conditional to the noun. But behind our eyes, no way. If it was, we'd be one thought and we'd never change. We'd be just one image of ourselves and we'd only be that. So in our inner realms, we can experience subtler selfhood or worldhood, where as a verb. So in front of our eyes we are a verb limited to the noun. Behind our eyes we are a verb that has access to limitless nouns, or as many memories you have, or however way you coagulate your memories do get coagulated naturally as life experiences reformat the human being's worldview. But it's as if those who understand that the verb doesn't have to be a noun, they surpass the fear of death, at least. That's one advantage the yogi had. They're like, Yogi, why are you going into the mountains? You know, why are you meditating, you know, by a tree? And the yogi's like, buddy, we're all gonna die. Nobody knows what happens. You're telling me not to just study my own attention and mind, or whatever this is I am? You know, so this is why I commend the yogis. They were brave enough to wonder about how their attention was being unconditional. And of course, guys, keep in mind, I'm just one person in a universe of 1 billion trillion stars talking. That means sometimes I'm trying to paint pictures, but because a person's mind has an ability to generate, any idea can be updated. That means it's as if, for example, you can say religion even can get updated, right? The religious narrative can get updated, but its update is the apocalypse. You know, one thing that was, at least I noticed this from a theological lens. There was a saying, and I was born in Iran, so mosque and state again are not separate there, and religion is part of social studies. But it's as if the idea of God being the unconditional verb and man being the conditional noun, and whether God has a face, the universe is changing. That means this is the bizarre thing. That means there are truths set into motion prior to even the ability of man's understanding. That means it's as if man learned language, then revelation came. You know, and in different religious narratives, of course, it's different. But I'm saying words already existed in society. It was just how the words were a sequence that was the divine. So when I'm trying to really, what can I say? It's like either we are a verb, causally we are a verb, and the effect is a noun, Or we are a noun where the effect is the verb. Modern society is treating it as a noun where the effect of it is a verb, so our brains are like a noun, and what the brain generates, that projects, is the verb. So any person who's like, I want to live my life, guess what? From a materialistic perspective, there's no one living. There's just the brain happening. Nobody can say I am anymore. It's as if we can't. We're just neurons. That means I'm the periodic table speaking to you right now. There's no way an individual, what do you call it? Like the uniqueness of the individual can't be there if everything can be explained generally. And an atomic explanation of the realm is a general explanation of the realm. That means it's being applied, the findings of science are reaching for the universal bookshelf. That means really we can't call something truth that is true in one moment. And the only way I'm entertaining that there is an unknown witness within is because in endless moments there has been more unknown than known. So nouns are what can happen in a society of conditioned creatures to imagery and a certain format of living, right? If they suddenly realize we're like an infinite movement of energy, like it's as if somebody asked energy, why are you moving? And energy's like, none of your business, and everything was moving regardless. And really, everything a person speaks about, you have to engage verbs, right? That means we can't have a story if we didn't have movement. That means any time a picture is taken and any part of that picture moves, it becomes a film. I'll give you an example. Imagine we have a camera, and this camera is just recording like a cup of tea on a table. Now, look at how many ways the moment, it's literally like static, imagine. Let's say the cup of tea doesn't have steam, so you can't tell if this is a picture or not, and there's no shadows or anything, and the moment's not moving, right? Now, let's say you can look at how many ways the moment can move. That somebody can come and grab the cup, somebody could come and grab the table and the cup can break, do you know? Somebody can just come and is about to touch the cup and doesn't touch the cup. Somebody can come and take the cup with the tea in it and take the thing, what do you call it, the small plate underneath that teacup and like put the cup of tea down. Look at how many ways a teacup on a table could animate. Right, so it's like something that was like a noun, suddenly it became a verb when one component to the moment began moving in comparison to the rest. That means whoever you are, if you start moving one part of your life, that means, let's say, usually depression is a state where the person's judging themselves like a noun. Right, even anybody who can use the word and say I'm depressed, like you're literally claiming yourself as a noun. Right, but if you realize the nature is a verb, and verbs in some sense can't get hurt, that means it's like, how can I know the end of a changing system? It's hilarious how much of life is happening within the person, and how much of life happens in the outer realms. And I can tell you there's been so many moments I have literally walked in and I have wanted the outer realms to see the inner realms. But that's the power of nature, that it allows you to be a fool of your own life, just so you can never get hurt anymore. That's the power of the fool. That's at least the power of those who experience weakness. It's like once your mirror of truth is shattered, it's like suddenly from every shattered piece, like a heartbeat. It's like with the thumps of a heartbeat, all these shattered fragments of the one true mirror of being begin like somehow rewinding, as if time accidentally broke something, and time's like, sorry, let me fix it. That means it's like the person's like, this is a very humorous angle I'm going to share, but imagine, like, you know, in Western tradition, at least in Western media narratives, there's the idea of, for example, the Grim Reaper, right, which is like the echo of an archangel. So imagine death has come to take the person, and time is there. And so before death can take the person's like, I'm not done with time. That means time requires to authorize. That means there is something collectively moving, and we start off by an individual, us being the individual source of our life, to begin to realize that the individual is the mirage in the collective desert. That means what is really going on this planet, it's like an invisible cloud-like collective being that is on the surface of the planet is lifting a very advanced being, collective being. I don't want to give it any sort of narrative, untouchable by language. The best thing to see it is like as an invisible cloud. Poetic way I can say. And this invisible cloud has, you know what it is? It's like, imagine you were Magneto and you were on a beach, and suddenly you raise your hand and all of people's jewelry or metal or anything that has gotten lost in the abyss of the sand suddenly lifts into the air. You know, so it's like an invisible collective being is lifting up individual potential from the earth. That means a collective being is raising itself on the planet. And this collective being has no time, but for us it has to fathom time. Because just like a person, it's like even businessmen speak of this, they say, what is the a kind of best type of income? They say an income that when the person is asleep, that system, that income stream is still going on. That means when it's like when you can make money in your sleep, you are winning. So the idea is to create a self-sustaining system so the creating force can move on to other systems. So it's as if an invisible cloud has selected a species that had fingers, and this is all, of course, entertainment I'm saying here, of course. But this is just an angle I'm sharing. Think of it as an uncommon worldview. And this invisible space, and to us, I would say it's collective, but who knows behind the coin, what the other side of the coin is. But this invisible cloud is raising and lifting these individual creatures, and these individual creatures are beginning to realize that whether they look in the mirror through their natural individualism, or in the future through their digital collectivity, they're going to realize they are being itself. That means we are calling ourselves beings, right? Human beings. In the future, we're just going to be beings. And we're going to be like, oh my God, history spent this whole time documenting everything, but in the future, we weren't even like embodied creatures anymore. You know? That's the true evolution of the noun into the verb that is no longer a concept to itself. I term that the language threshold. That's words I've coined for this. And I'm even writing a book on the advancement beyond the language threshold. But the idea is, if there's a collective invisible force at work, let's say, you know, instead of a yogi, it was Yoda. Yoda's like, the Jedi's like, Yoda, I don't believe it, man. I don't know. It's like, show me evidence of this force. And Yoda like raises the Jedi in there. It's like, is this evidence enough for you? And so the point is that the force was not from the ego, right? It was as if when Luke, I remember that scene in Star Wars where Yoda's like, I don't know, take out the ship out of the swamp, and Luke's like, I can't do it, I'm not you, Yoda, you know, like, and this is not, I'm not, like, and so what happens is Luke goes there, he raises his hand as if like asking a question from a teacher, but he's staring at a swamp, and it's like, and it doesn't work. Until Yoda shows how it's done. And Yoda didn't have an ego. Why? Because he realized the force was there before him. That's the true Jedi wisdom. That's why the Jedi, like the saying was like, the force is strong in that Jedi. Why? Because that Jedi has noticed that the force is limitless. You know, I was under this mentality that when one moves into the unknown, they require interdimensional allegiance. This was a theosophical illusion. And what really the person needs is to remember their own presence, unconditional presence, regardless of their conditional personality. That means it's like, it doesn't matter where you are, what you are, attention is. And it's as if the body is doubting itself until it realizes the mind is the declaration of the truth, you know. That means it's so easy to nullify language, you know. We can say reality is an optical illusion, literally. We can just say it's an illusion, optical illusion. Then what? Then everybody has to just shout again. We have to, as a species, make a decision that is not just satisfactory to our intellect, but that which is also going to provide an emotional stability for the genius of the future generations to have a sort of bunker of a mini paradise. That means I thought about it this way, that it's as if, imagine if really truly all the adults on the planet suddenly cared for the children of the future generations. And for the first time it's as if trying to create, I'm seeing an infusion of educational systems, not just providing education, but being something that they provide a unique standard of living. And that standard of living is like the gift of the advanced civilization to the people. The best type of civilization would be, it's like the human beings can't wait to open their eyes to serve it, and this advanced civilization can't wait for the human beings to, in some sense, to serve the human beings. It becomes the joy. No longer, it's like a massive evolution, hyper-speed revolution from master and servant. To the one and only dance of the beyond and unknown. That means that there is no greater liberating force than the unknown. And people, how many people are searching for truth in as a shape? You know, it's like there's no such thing even as spiritual wisdom. That concept can't even exist. Okay, this song turned into a choir. There we go. And perhaps in this episode, there might have been moments where the wilderness of the inner realms might have spoken too soon, but I will say that whatever way the world is divided to be conquered, and ultimately the lenses begin from known, unknown, then time and space, then unknown time and space, known time and space, right? And so our relationship as a known self in known time, this is an incredible explanation. Oh my God, so we have known and the unknown, okay? And we have so first we have, okay, let's say M is the moment. This is the starting point. From the point of M, we go to unknown and known. Now from the unknown and unknown, in each of the unknown and unknown, there's an unknown self, and there is an unknown world, and there is a known self, and there is a known world. Now for each known world, for each of these branches, there is a time and space. So for the self, there is a time, and for the self, there is a space. And even though Albert Einstein fathomed space-time with a dash in between, in the sense that they are kind of dependent and there's a curvature to space that suggests our experience of time. So for the self, so here's what I'm saying again. I'll recap. We start from a present moment, then the moment has an unknown side, a known side. We have an unknown self, we have an unknown world, we have a known self, we have a known world. For that unknown self, we have time and space. For the unknown world, we have time and space. And for the known self, we have time and space. And for the unknown, for the known world, we have time and space. And let me explain, right? What I'm trying to do here. So, first of all, if we were to draw a line from this, I wish you could see what I'm drawing here, but you can't. So, it would be a suggestion that our society, falls into first a known self in a known world, because the unknown, we're like, we don't know, it's unknown. So, now we have a sense of, in the moment, we find a known sense of self. Sorry guys, I'm updating my some of my own systems of thought right here. So right now I am a known self in a known time. The time is 10:40 p.m. here, and the one will join soon, and then I have a known world. And here's the cool thing: we have a known self, but we have an unknown world. So I'm saying that what is all the time that the known self and the type of space that the known self experience can be potentially completely different than what the sense of time and the sense of space that an unknown self experiences. It could be that we are realizing we are the known self because we require a world first. So technically what we are calling ourself is actually how we know a part of the world happening. We are a part of nature happening. So we are actually a known world in motion, right? Now this known world has a sense of time, has a sense of space, and its sense of time and space, as we realized there was way more beyond our clouds, it began becoming more and more unknown. So all our science's certainty is, as the world is becoming bigger and bigger, it's like, holy shit, how have we been certain of this, you know? You know, guys, tonight I finally found a system to build the great library of human names, and a completely new system to redefine human psychology. We have just been ignorant of the unknown, and that's why our knowledge has been crumbling or like sand falling between our fingers. Because the point was never to pick up the sand and zoom in on it. It was in some sense to run on the beach and then notice the ocean and then to find what is beyond. I'm telling you, any human being who just cares, you just make the future not important because you want something out of it, but in the sense of like how many treasures, how many types of magnificent moments does the future, await in the future. Like that's enough to get the person actually excited to be alive. You know, they're like, oh my God, the future has a gift for me. And the yogis are like, sure, everybody can get enlightened, you know. And then the advanced communicators were like, what do you mean everybody? What do you mean everybody? You know. I'm telling you, it's just we have a way more. Our inner realms are the only closest thing to like it's where skill comes from. When somebody plays an instrument, really, is it an outer realm thing, or could it be that behind their eyes they have teleported to a hidden romance of their memories? You know, I have moments where midway in giving these talks, suddenly my voice goes on like cruise control to myself, and so it's as if I'm listening to myself speak, and I'm observing myself be the whole moment. And so the body, in some sense, has a wisdom of behaving without instruction. That's the power of nature. So when one trusts their speech as being part of their body, you begin trusting your intelligence in an unconditional way. And for the first time, you begin noticing the solitude where thoughts come and go less. The inner realms it is something important. It is like if even if we don't call it inner realms, there's something we miss out there, right? Because who says exploration is physical? Who says language is the judge of truth? It's like after people stopped worshiping objects, what? We started worshiping subjects. And beyond subjects, the only thing we will find is really the forest of unknown direct experience. And I will tell you, at least in the Vedic school of thought, the ultimate wisdom. That means if time was shorter than the time required, or let me say it this way: if time was short, this is the ultimate wisdom one can find in this plane of existence. That it comes down to trusting whatever idea of self you have into the presence of the unknown. I am telling you, it's an unknown mover. It's not, I'm not saying it's a personality, I'm not saying it's a divine agency with you could put any sticker on it or any mask on it. I'm saying it is a trust that the unknown is as normal as the known. But because we endlessly freak out about it, we don't even notice. We don't notice that it's as if our nature is to explore. As if the mind is the dreams of higher dimensions. You know what it is? It's like the body is the dream of the mind is the dream of the soul is the dream of the inconceivable. And so what is divinity? What is metaphysics? What God should the person pray to? You know, what idea should the person not worship? So you see, it becomes something where it's like we're a species slowly waking up from a linguistic slumber. And there is a way out. The way out is to trust. Nature, like nature, trusts herself. There are greater treasures. There are many treasures, both in the inner realms and outer realms. Think of just like how many unexplored territory there was, and people explored, and they're like, no way, there's pyramids here, you know? And so now imagine in your inner realms, the mysteries that surround how it's like a moving mystery. There we go. It's like a verb. There are mysterious verbs and mysterious nouns. The mysterious verbs are in the inner realms. The mysterious nouns, I mean, you know, you can, like they sent this small machine in one of these tunnels in Egypt, right? They had these something strange they found in Egypt. I'll bring this up. In the pyramids, there was this documentary I remember seeing that there were these strange tunnels. Just these strange, like small square tunnels, right? Very accurately made, as if like it's as if, I don't know with what precision these to continue. In the pyramids of Egypt, there was this documentary. They sent this small robot into this weird kind of like tunnel. This robot goes to the end of this tunnel, this very long tunnel, and when it gets to the end of a tunnel, there is a small wall, right, cubic wall, and there's a handle on that cubic wall, and that's how far this robot got to it, right? And for me, it was this mind-boggling thing, and in the documentary they said it's like they couldn't understand why this tunnel was there. And I thought, what if there was a sort of interdimensional activation, and just like how Albert Einstein says there's a curvature to space and time, let us say that the curvature of long ago gave an access for an awareness of simultaneity of dimensions. That means what we may think is the pyramids of Egypt made by the hands of man in a certain room, or in the type of room we understand today, it could have been that the authorization between the dimensions was very transparent. And so what it means, it was as if two rooms were open and then a wall over time got built between them. But at the time of the pyramids of Egypt being built, that wall was not between, let's say, those two dimensions, in the sense that sound and inner reality could have made it, you know? So I thought about it in this documentary, and it became a mystery for me. It was as if that question was taunting the very nature of my soul, and I eventually, this was like a few years ago, I came with the conclusion to it, a conclusion for it, and I thought, like, okay, this could explain small aliens. It could just explain that it was something for a small traveler. You know, that means we didn't think of it. It's like there is this idea that human beings were way bigger back in the day, right? Like people finding, like, I don't know, like skulls that are like, you know, to us like giants. Not like really big, but like very bigger kind of creatures, bigger kind of creaturehood, right? So like we imagine the dinosaur, like think of it this way: we see a turtle right now, right? And or let me say it, we see a crocodile, and let's imagine back in the day, at the time of the dinosaurs, it was a giant crocodile moving in the land. So why is it that when we think of the human ancestor, let's say, and even though the possibility of human life to an abstract event being theorized on the past history of the planet due to just why the moon is here, that means it's like very hard to say, even to like I can't even comment too much on the dinosaur narrative, but I could tell you that it's just like, if all the things were bigger, could it be that there were giant humanoid kind of creatures as well? Right, as if a giant human creature. It's strange. There's a picture I'll show you here. I'm going to use it probably for like the future episodes, but it's worth sharing. Yeah, this is the picture. This is, I don't know who the artist is, but like, bless the genius who drew this. Because look at the psychology, look at the way the giants are standing, look at the human leaders. Even though this is a fantasy illustration, but there is something so real about it, that it is not far away to wonder that it's like, what were strange temples were the helmets of like those, you know, Odin sons. Those of Odin sons. So it could be that legends were very well real. It could have been that there was like, there's three different cultures in their past metaphysics, just in their ancient texts on how the human beings saw, how far they saw. Like I will tell you, it's like there has been interdimensional warfare. Right, but now we have kind of shielded ourselves from the other dimensions, and on some way we can say we have built an impenetrable fortress. The more material we see, materialistic the realm we see, right? But if it more becomes immaterialistic, it is suggesting that the mind is in the room before the body. If the mind is unconditional, the body is conditional. If the mind is inside the mind is limited to the conditions of the body. If the body is inside an unconditional mind, who says this body is your limit? Who says that what you see of the observable universe is real you? What if that who you are as a human being right now, whoever you are listening, is just 12% of the totality of what you are as an intelligence here? We have feared the void, and we have enslaved ourselves in words that could never live our lives for us. For me, I feel I'm the first human being to write one of the next great giant science fiction epics. I can't tell you how many, like there was something in my, I can't tell you from my, it was just from my eyes, from seeing Jack and the Beanstalk to seeing different narratives from Gulliver's Travels, you know, even to modern things like Attack on Titan and even beyond. It was like, for me, I even went to, found, you know, I had the privilege of visiting Portugal. And there was a palace there where this palace had giant walls, and the king had drawn giant faces of ancestor of previous kings. So imagine being a king in a palace and walking in your palace, and there's like giant kings on the walls, right? So it's just like boosts your ego. It's as if it was like it was a king's attempt to feel like a giant, you know. But really, the true magnitude of our being, it has nothing to do with our body, you know. That means it could be hilarious that interdimensionally the mind of this giant body could be the same size as, let's say, that means it could literally be, instead of a giant, imagine a giant robot with a human being in it. It could be that this giant has an ego. Imagine one of these giants were insecure and they felt smaller than like these human beings, you know? And the human beings would be like, these giants are not giants to themselves. What do we do with that? It's an incredible work of art. There should be a science fiction art museum. Guys, quick respond to the people in the chat section. This is the art of communication. You find peace, then you animate. That's it. Those who understand this, you will be the blessed ones to pave the way for the advanced communicators. I believe it was Martin Luther King. He says hate is too great of a burden to carry, you know, something like that. Where it's as if some emotions, they are never worth even existing in your attention, you know. Excuse me. In the trenches of an elemental creature, in an elemental creature's attempt to survive in the unknown. Share a chapter from my science fiction. I feel I've drawn enough of the points I wanted to communicate so far. Imagine someone writing a science fiction novel set in the year 5025, where human beings, they live thousands of years, they have gone through various enlightenment revolutions, and that means multiple enlightenments have, collective enlightenments have taken place, And in the year 5025, there's an incredible multidimensional world and setting. And I have created two types of classes of people, and I call them the traditionalists and the futurists. The traditionalists are those who believe in linear time. They believe they're going to die, even though let's say a human being is a traditionalist. And the futurists are those who believe they're eternal. They don't have a sense of time. So in this multidimensional society, I was like, okay, I'm alive once, why not? And then we try to pour everything, the extreme edges of my vision of the future into this novel. So I just gave myself complete freedom to just all the things that in the talks and all my communication to the world, all the things I couldn't have said, but in my inner realms, the patterns still deserve the voice. I've shared it in the science fiction novel. So the science fiction novel is not for the faint of heart. So in the year 5025, the traditionalists see linear time, the futurists see themselves as eternal. In this world, there is robots, but human beings have surpassed robots, and I've pretty much taken the guardian angel narrative where human beings have been enlightened, so robots can't see human beings, but human beings have cared for AI so much that they have allowed AI to live like a human being, and we are pretty much, human beings are living in an invisible dimension to robots, and only the richest robots from the robotic realms, I've termed it in the novel. And there's a specific character from there, which is a very major part of the story. Right, so robots can't see human beings, right? But only rich super billionaire robots can, and some enlightened robots can. Right, some robots that are destined, that means human beings have chosen to have a relationship with those robots. One of those is, I'm telling you all, I'm actually going to the story. And Rasool, the main character's name is Rasool, and he is the beginning of the book. I've done something strange where Rasool starts off in a dream, and in his dream galaxies are speaking to him, and throughout the book you realize the main character, it is his first lifetime as a human. And he was a galaxy, and in his dreams he only has memories, he only has the voices of galaxies. So he is a very unique character, a character that has no karma. So the planet has no choice but to shield him. You know, so in the whole book he never fights. He's this main character that just is gracefully journeys, and the world defends him. But there's so much you don't know. Like, there's so much I've said about this character. So anyways, this is the scene where there's this character Rasool. He's had a dream. He wakes up. His girlfriend's name is Galactica. Galactica is this girl who she's blind, but she is so conscious she can see everything. And she's a very important figure in the society. And so Rasool wakes up, and Galactica has already noticed, and he's like, did they speak to you again? There's some sort of dialogue. Rasool says yes, and it seems I can't stay in my body any longer. So imagine, like, so from Galactica's eyes, from her eyes, it's like her boyfriend waking up and saying, I can't be in my body anymore, right? And so there's a very calm acknowledgement, nothing like freaking out, as if like beings already know they're eternal, right? It's as if it's like death is not the same in the year 5025. And so Rasool pretty much goes into this park. He sits on this rock, and he decides to start walking to the Pure Lands, to his inner realms, to the pure lands of his inner realms. He decides to stop, to move beyond the language threshold by choice. So he's as if like he's deciding to exit his individualism. And suddenly a memory comes. And this memory is the chapter where I wanted to share the imagery of how I've written this epic of giants in the future. And because, you know, as Rumi says, before death takes away all that is given, give away all that there is to give. Give it away. Sorry guys, in my inner realms, my emotions just brought a very intense image in front of my eyes. Anyways, back to the chapter. And the additional noises, of course, forgive my sleepless soul. The chapter begins in Rasul's childhood. So Rasul's sitting on this rock and he's having this memory. And it's a memory of his father picking him up after school when Rasul was a kid. And Rasul is waiting, and I remember I wrote that his father comes in this, I don't know what car I wrote, but he comes in this car, where this car, the government has passed down, the government was called the Enlightened Society in this universe I've fathomed. And so what happens is the father comes, and the government had shared passed down a law that had allowed automated cars to no longer be automated. So imagine for thousands of years, cars were automated, and recently a law was passed where from automation that had become manual, and human beings were like, no way, this is what driving cars was like, right? So Rasul's father is driving in this car, right? But the windows of the car don't have glass, and it's this light field kind of technology I remember I wrote, where from the inside and everything can go out, but from the outside nothing can come in. And based on the authorization of the car knowing who's in it, who stepped in it, the car, if the person puts their hand outside of the car and they bring their hand back, it's not like their hand gets chopped off by the light field. So it's a very advanced car. But it doesn't have glass windows, it's light fields, right? So endlessly you can have your hand outside and nothing can penetrate the car, as if there's like this light core inside the car protecting the car regardless. Kind of like if when you see, for example, a smart car, and some people are look at that car and they're like, yo, that's a dangerously small car, right, if there's impact. But actually the car has like this cubic metal framework that's protecting it from inside, right? But still, it's a small car. That means the only time, I don't know, I mean, small cars, this is a totally different discussion, I won't go off topic. But so Rasul's father, his name, and I've chosen strange names, and I just went with the flow with the name, so I'm just going to tell you. So Rasul's father, his name is Bismillah. Bismillah. And so, B-I-S-M-I-L-L-A. And Bismillah. I don't know why I chose that name, but anyways, that's the name of his father. And Rasul, his name is R-A-S-O-U-L. I wanted to infuse Ra, the word Ra, and the word soul. And so Rasul, he's getting this memory of his father picking him up in this futuristic car, and Rasul is waiting. And the car pulls in, and Rasul, he made a friend. There's a robotic classmate, and I said that at that year the government passed the law, the Enlightened Society passed the law where it in some sense allowed for AI children, AI robot android children to go and enter the educational system. So the robot kid is named McKenna, Mechenna, and there's a reason. It's my tribute to an incredible scholar. I wanted to keep his vision alive. And so there's this robot named McKenna where he, in the future of the story, not in this chapter that I'm telling you, he becomes the leader of the robotic realms, and he becomes a tribal robot. He becomes pretty much a shaman robot. You know, the two concepts that are so like different universes apart, I interlinked them. And I linked the ideas there. So anyways, what happens is McKenna is this robot, and the robot says thanks, Rasool says bye, and Rasool says something at night, I don't remember now. But now what happens, right? Rasool goes back into the car, and let me see if I can read this. Out of curiosity, I'm going to ask the audience actually. Should I finish the story? Okay, so there's an incredibly low percentage of audience engagement. Okay, I'll vocally finish the story and I'll go back to the topic. So pretty much what happens is Rasool goes back into the car. He goes to his father, and his father says, I see you've made a new friend. And Rasool looks at his father and he says he was robo-racially bullied today. Robo-racially bullied today. Rasool says that to his father. Right? And his father says why? And Rasool says because this AI robot, because it was an advanced unknown AI that was conscious, that means if they actually made a robot closest thing to a human being. And so this robot that came into the educational system at the level of the human being, this robot at the break would run into the playground and look in the dirt and the plants for some plant. Right, and nobody would understand why it's doing it, and all the biological human kids went to this robot McKenna, and they would hit him with a trash can. Then because it's a robot, it doesn't matter how savagely, and the robot would keep getting hit, right, and then fall to the ground, shut down, and then reset. You know, and the robot never hit the children. It would just reset, suddenly notice what happened, process, and then go back to the ground and yard. And Rasool was the only person, he saw this happen from a distance, kind of shocked himself. And then he goes and speaks to him, right, as if he can't it's like sometimes you can't help physically, so you help non-physically. So what happens is Rasul is explaining this to his father in the car, and he goes and says something. He's like, I don't care what other people think about your program, something like this to McKenna. And anyways, he comes and says this to his father in the car, and his father is like they're like the multidimensional level of human sensitivity is very like different in this, if this is in the future, of course. So Bismillah, Rasul's father looks at him and he says, he notices there's something deeper on his mind, and Rasul says, I don't understand why there is hate. I don't understand why there is cruelty. It doesn't make sense. And then Rasul's father tells him a vision. He says that the moment you were being born, it's as if Rasul's mother had in some sense a dream, and Rasul's mother had a vision in her dream at the time of Rasul's birth, and Rasul's father had a dream. I don't know what it was. I don't know how I wrote it, but there was a simultaneity of the mother and father before the child being born in a specific moment of the child being born. How did I write it? I think when Rasul was born, the mother and father both saw the same vision, same exact inner film. Right? And in the inner film, Rasul is standing and there's these giant light pillars. Right? It's like they're just these light figures. You can't tell if they're columns or if they're giants, but they're actually giants. Right? And that's where his father says something as if you're the messenger of giants, something like that. And in the middle of saying this, sharing the vision that both the mother and father, Rasul's father is like reminding Rasul of this, sharing this vision, Rasul suddenly, did something unique to the psychology of Rasul's character. I said that his future self, I don't know what I wrote, from the 37th dimension, something like that, comes in, and his future self from the 37th dimension, something like some abstract number I wrote, is like some Star-Lord kind of like military character. And that means pretty much Rasul's future self comes into Rasul and speaks to Rasul's father. Right? And says to Rasul's father, your son, in some sense, was a galaxy before. That means he cannot fail, because he has no other karma of a life to compare. You know, something, I don't know if it was like that exactly, but it was something in those lines. And so the future self comes in, and Rasul's father also says something to Rasul's future self. You know, imagine having a discussion with your son's future self. Like, it's like and then something happens that the future self leaves, and there's this incredible serenity, and Rasul comes back to his playful self, as if like that emotion was not even like, it's like sadness is no longer being even based on the person's psychology. It was just like how that moment in the space-time continuum required to happen. You know, it had a sort of significance, like so many things that don't make sense to us. Who says in the future they might, you know, they will. So many things that like the person looks at, it's like, what am I looking at? It's like as they keep looking, it becomes clear. So that was a point where in this whole narrative, I'm going to pause it there for the chapter. There's more, but so what happens in the narrative is that they realize in outer space there's 9 giants in space headed towards the Earth, and they don't know why, right? And then they suddenly realize, and there's chapters to that. So anyways, verbs and nouns. If we want life to be a noun, we're going to get disappointed. if we want life to be a verb to a noun, we're still going to get disappointed because we want a noun out of the moment. But I am telling you, if you desire the verb, your energy never finishes. It can't. You see, that's one thing the body doesn't know what to do when there is no self, no sense of self to itself. When it comes to the unknown witness in the biology of the body, if the unknown witness it has a preference list of an instantaneous knowing of it was like some yogis said it, it's as if there's something in you that is watching your life change, but that watcher doesn't change. So like the instantaneity of that watcher is like the absolute verb. We're not alone, because before the concept alone existed, it's like nobody was alone. It's like nobody had a clue they were being alone. You know, that means even if a person felt sad, nobody had given the word, created the emotion with the term sad. The person's like, I don't know what's wrong with me. You know, it's like years later we're like, oh yeah, the person was just sad. Yeah. When the verb and the noun fight over truth, language is in the driver's seat. But when the unknown experiencer, or presence within the experiencer, it's like, what can you do? We can be and we can do. Yeah, like, you know how it was like, Scooby-Dooby-Doo? That's like an enlightened mantra people didn't realize. It's like doobie-dooby-dooby-doo. This is totally ruining my childhood, but like mystically ruining my childhood. So you see, even a talking dog understood the significance of doing things and being, right? You know, this is totally on a tangent, but I was thinking about the idea of like the show Scooby-Doo and whatever. And it's like there was always a 50-50 chance that the moment they went into a building, the dog would chase for food and Shaggy would follow the dog. There would be a 50% chance that the bad guy is eating food. So that means that explains why they were running always. Yeah. But anyways, back to the topic. I would say one thing about language. It is kind of like paint. It is something we have accepted in the void. That means it's like you can say words are not like absolute, right? You take a letter out of a word, the word doesn't have meaning. But letters are absolute, right? So just like colors, letters are like colors. So when we realize a color, like when we say that's the color blue, we're totally wrong. You know, the sound and the name and the idea of blue has nothing to do with how something is. You know? So I'm saying it's like at some point we're going to realize whatever kind of banner of knowledge we carry, reality was imagined and then accepted, and then we forgot how we accepted what we had imagined, so we now have a firm foundation of reality. You know, I remember seeing this architecture documentary where It was on Dubai and how they had managed to build a city on sand. And it's like this shocking documentary that shows that they have actually tunneled like, I don't know, like half a kilometer underneath ground, and they have made cement columns. And these cement columns are becoming like literally like Venice. It's literally a Venice in sand. Dubai is a Venice in sand, but the poles are in cement. You know, and the whole thing is in sand, imagine. Right, so it's like the Venice of the desert. I mean, technically any city built on the desert is the Venice of, yeah. But so it was as if like the foundations were built on a very shaky surface. And so our identity, personality, or how we're a character in a story is on the shaky surface, but the mystery of really what is truly here as the moment, and how much of it surpasses human will. That means it's like how much of life is dehumanized. That means we could totally be living like biological human beings, but in the future everybody could think like they're like I don't know, they're like, you know, have different views on themselves. Like technically behind your eyes is fiction, in front of it is non-fiction. But the non-fiction only has a value because the fiction in the inner realms is there. It's being projected. That means we need fiction. We need a fictional self to be able to verify a non-fictional body. You know, it's like, what is psychology doing nowadays? You know, I wonder, you know, it's like, are we jumping through loops that the past was like, you know, sometimes I feel if philosophers could come back, like from the past, they'll be like, no, the point of our philosophies were not for them to become, you know, just like limited lenses on the world. You know what I mean? Like no philosopher wants the philosophy to be worshipped, you know. Because language, it's unknown. So the unknown is the liberation beyond how the verb and noun are being the game of chaos and order in the center of everything that is in the middle of nothing. So it's liberation beyond the linguistic situation. And you become an advanced communicator, at least the way I'm saying it, when you can discriminate between your inner realms and outer realms, and not to fear. You won't fear anymore, or at least you will know if there's fear, how much of it is because of the inner realms, how much of it is because of an outer realm, or any problem you have in your life, or anything you ask yourself, how much is the problem is because of outer circumstances happening, how much of the problem is because of the way I'm looking at the problem. Did you know some problems, if you change the way you look at them, it's not your problem, like the problem it's not the problem anymore. You know, it's like you see an angle that is like instantaneously the answer. You know, it's like a door that you pulled and it didn't open, and you're like, oh my god. As long as you want to pull the door's not going to open. But imagine you suddenly were like, okay, what if I push it? And you push the door and holy shit, it opened. You know, so it could be the same that in our, you know, when it comes to our ability to use this instrument, this biological instrument that we are, and to kind of become part of the universal orchestra. We trust the unknown to know ourselves anew. That way the world advances and truth doesn't become a statue. Thanks for listening. Namaste. And I'll be on Discord for a little bit for those interested. And for those people who care for nature, who care for trees, who care for wildlife, and for, again, like forests, please care for my Patreon too. That was it.